went to one more session today.
I did. I went to one more session, and I had extremely high hopes for it. The title of it was A Fearless Approach to Social Change, and it sounded very, very idealistic and passionate, but it was not. It seemed more like an ad for the
just a single presenter.
It was a question and answer session, like with a moderator.
Okay, so there's a moderator that was talking back and forth with the presenter.
Yeah, and basically they did, they couldn't get the presentation working, like the video screen working.
Oh,
it was
AV
a
issues are never
disaster
fun.
from the very beginning, and they finally did, and they showed some videos, but it was kind of like, I don't know.
The content just wasn't that compelling. Huh?
No, it was videos from her foundation, and so it was like, okay, well, I guess I could have looked at those online, like show me something else.
So she didn't really necessarily share any innovative ideas or concepts. It was more just a commercial for what she was doing.
Yeah, she shared what she felt were her principles of fearlessness.
Which is what?
Which I will share with you.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Number one, make big bets and make history. So for that, she said something about malaria, how her foundation had helped cure malaria or further cure malaria. So the percentage they were going for was 75% like reduction in malaria cases by 2015, and they are well on their way to doing that. So set big goals that seem unachievable. So that's a good takeaway, I think, for people.
Yeah, I mean the idea that when you set a goal, you then operate in such a way as to accomplish that goal. So that if you set a low or a very nebulous goal, you don't know how to position yourself or your company to get there.
Yeah. So it's sort of, for a retail sort of environment, it's sort of like the Nordstrom sort of like overperform for people, or give people more than what they expect.
Yep.
So it's kind of it's that, but for foundations. Also experiment early and often, and don't be afraid to go first. So
which is risky.
Yeah, it is. So it's always be testing, as we talked about earlier, and be an innovator. And
the testing can mitigate the risk, right? So I mean, if you're putting a gamble on, say in this person's case, an initiative on solving the malaria crisis, and as long as you're testing along the way and taking the temperature, how are we doing? How are we doing? Are we moving forward? Are we moving backward? Then it helps mitigate some of that risk.
Yeah. This one I really loved, and you always hear, don't be afraid of failure. You hear that from every CEO, every inventor has said, for the one thing that did succeed, I had 600 things that didn't. But she says failure is an option, but we'll learn from it. So fail fast and fail forward. So I love that. Fail fast, fail forward.
Yep.
So don't make a big deal of it. Move on in progress from it as well.
I think you're always going to have failures, and so like doing your best to learn from that experience, and as much as it sucks and you don't necessarily feel good about it, just don't let it be a wasted thing.
Exactly. Always learn from it. Reach beyond your bubble. So if you look around your table and you're surrounded by people who are like-minded, or always look for what did she say? Look for the people you were trying to serve at your table.
Interesting.
So if you're trying to serve, going back to earlier, some sort of multicultural sort of ethnic community, make sure that you're surrounded by those people so that you understand what they're looking for. Don't just assume that you know.
So that goes back to know your audience, right? Yeah. And so I know that for some of the nonprofits that we work with, it can be very easy to just go back to the audiences that you know.
The comfortable audience that you know how to reach.
That knows how to reach, that you know what their reaction will be, that you know how to reach, that you speak their language, and so kind of getting outside of that bubble and figuring out, how do I reach a different audience?
Right. How do I expand my reach? How do I, create a different message, one that's still branded and the same message, but maybe packaged a little bit differently.
Right. Yep.
And then they showed a video. This was right when I left.
Okay.
This was the end of it for me. But they showed a video of Steve Jobs from, gosh, like the 80s maybe.
Okay.
He was very, very young, but it was an interesting story. He said when he was young, and I had never heard this about Steve Jobs, but he said when he was 12, he picked up the phone and called Mr. Hewlett of Hewlett and Packard.
Oh.
And he asked if he had any spare parts because he wanted to build some sort of computer situation. And Mr. Packard or Mr. Hewlett was in the phone book. And so he just called him up and asked him if he had any spare parts, and he answered the phone. And then I guess that summer he interned for Mr. Hewlett of Hewlett and Packard. And the rest is history. He became Steve Jobs.
Yeah, it was Steve Jobs, but he became the Steve Jobs we know and love.
Yeah. And then I left. So, but yeah, I mean, there were definitely some takeaways, but something that I've always kind of kept in the forefront of my mind is BHAG, which means big, hairy, audacious goals. So, don't let mediocrity get in your way of being exceptional.